Okay, and we're back. Took a while for my opponent to get here, so um, pretty much we're in pretty bad trouble already. Uh, he's going to take my anticipate, and that's going to put me real far behind. I guess he could take something that isn't an anticipate, but that would be very, very wrong. Um, that's basically the worst possible situation there is the turn one Thoughtseize into anticipate, because that was the primary card that was going to keep me in this game. I don't really probably have a way to kill this person at this point, barring a lucky top deck. We'll go ahead and spike that now. That was really, really lucky. Now in Ascendancy, and we're way ahead, which is kind of stupid because we didn't earn that. And honestly, even if I don't get an Ascendancy, I might be able to just go with a beatdown plan here. Because he's pretty close to dead. Yeah, that's exactly the card I needed. So even if he spends his turn killing that, I'm going to dump some tokens and punch him pretty hard on the next turn. And he has to decide if he wants to counter that. Which I think he has to. And that was incredibly huge. He's got to have a second Bile Blight. He wouldn't have done that if he didn't. Because he's going to die this turn if he doesn't have another Bile Blight. Or he's going to be close enough to dead that it's really not an issue. And I could have taken 2 more damage there, which maybe is right. But once again, if he's got the Bile Blight, that's not as good a play. I'm expecting to get Dragoned here, which is okay. Or I'm sorry, Cruxifated here, which is okay. And I'm not really behind at this point. He kind of has to counter everything I do. And he doesn't really have the blue mana probably to do that yet. So that's not an important card. He could have another Crux of Fate, which would be fine. I'm just going to march that out because it's less important than the things that are going to follow. Soulfire doesn't do me anything. I need nukes. Mystic Monastery doesn't do me anything. That he might counter. So the best thing we could get would be a Secure the Waste here, because it would win the game. Nah. And that does it. Plenty of draws to pull it. And that's lethal. So that's how the control matchup often goes. He had answers to all my stuff, and then I killed him. It's pretty normal. And that's pretty much how we want it to go. Now, he might be bringing in Virulent Plague, so I think Dragonlord Ojutai is probably smart. All my counterspells come in, obviously. My Soulfires are honestly kind of weak, and I do need to slightly reduce my nuke count. If I see the Virulent Plague, the nukes will come back in. Probably he's running it as a one-of. And we're not that afraid of a one-of. It certainly can beat us badly. But we're still favored in that situation with him having it as a one-of. We can often get him low enough that he's just in Stoke the Flames range. And a lot of lists don't run it, but anyone who's running Shota's list does. So that's kind of the fear, is that a lot of people really do like that list. We see it a lot. I ran into LSV earlier playing it, and Virulent Plague ended up beating me. Though it was more me making a couple play errors that handed him a game that I didn't need to hand him. But many people in pros are moving to that build, which does have a single plague in 75. So that may change our builds a lot in order to make sure we have a couple more outs. I used to have erases in the sideboard. Those left because I wasn't seeing anything that needed erasing. They're probably going to come back in. So, yeah, that's my story. Anyway, quick, easy game 1, despite the slow start. So we'll move on to game 2. Against control, this is an extremely powerful hand. I don't need to tap out. I have Disdainful Strokes and Negates for the threats that I can't beat. I will open with a Monastery. We can use that Temple of Triumph later when we have a little more information, but we definitely don't need to lead with it right now. And while it's not much damage, it's better to not take damage than it is to take damage. Well, that's fantastic. That even gives us plenty of gameplay against Thoughtseize, because we can just anticipate post Thoughtseize and grab something else good. He may have the Plague in hand and be thinking about playing it. We'll find out. Alright, raise the alarm. That's the start of our offense. So we're going to go ahead and dump the Flooded Strand. Having the 3 lands in play is better than the 2 just because Silumgar Scorn. We really don't want to run into Silumgar Scorn for nothing. If he misses his land drop here, he's in a whole lot of trouble because he's not going to be able to set up his card draw, and we are. We're already well on our way to drawing a lot of cards. Take an island. We typically only need 1 plains, and we'll drop the tokens, force him to counter that if he's got it. And he didn't, which is interesting. And that puts us way up. So I don't need to cruise yet. And because of that, I'm going to play this. I would play the Siobhan Reef if I was going to be trying to cruise next turn. But right now, I'm happy to just make my land drops and wait until he starts making his land drops while hitting him with some soldiers. Because I can eventually back that Treasure Cruise up with a negate if I need to. If he Thoughtseizes me here, I probably just let him take the negate. A Duress. Duress, I'm going to hit the negate. or I'm gonna negate the duress. Because he's gonna take it anyway, and I'd rather him not see my cards. Well, we're gonna go ahead and try to stick the Ascendancy here. Yeah. And I could have anticipated there, but it's probably not wise. We're still in a lot of trouble to a Virulent Plague, but we're not dead to it. Yeah, and there's the Singleton Virulent Plague. Sadly, I don't have anything to beat it. Oh, great. Well, that's a turn late. So the goal now is to draw into an Ojutai and protect it, which we have plenty of gas to do, and he doesn't really have any. So I'm not terribly worried right now. There's not too much you can do about them getting their first Virulent, or they're getting their Virulent Plague before you get any of your gas. That's just bad luck, but considering that's a one of in any list I've seen. But we can certainly play around it, especially since we don't have to take... Don't really need the untapped land. I gotta keep basically any nukes I have. I only have 6 in here. And those are kind of important to make sure I finish him off. Yeah, that's pretty much what I want. So we need to draw some lands. I could have Wild Slashed him there and then played a land, which might have been wise. That's actually a pretty good land to have. It comes into play untapped, and that's important. I actually have to lose this Wild Slash. It's pretty rough. So I don't feel like cruising here does me any good. It gives him something to counter, which I actually don't want. Whereas I can happily just stoke the Flames of DOT and maybe make him counter that. Because he's only got 1 blue. I would rather have multiple negates. One of those weird circumstances where I'm going to pitch a Treasure Cruise despite having perfectly serviceable things to do with it. Well, that should be game. And yeah, that's game. Because now I can negate anything he tries to do to save his idiot. Or to Save his bacon? Keeping the fodder just because it's a cheaper way to activate 2 Ascendancies, and honestly 3 Ascendancies is not going to make any difference. And he's hexproof. And that's life. Alright, pretty simple game. That's a really good matchup for us. I'd say it's probably in the 80% range. If they're not playing the... if they're playing white-blue, it's almost unlosable. Black version, if it's got the 1 Virulent Plague, I mean, that's their out to us. We can still beat them through it. And we can cycle through a deck faster than them. So it's generally been about an 85% win rate for me against this build in about, I don't know, 13 or 14 sets against blue-black, maybe more. And at least one of my losses has been a severe misplay, so...